The universe was falling into darkness. Alien forces, once spread across the stars, were growing bolder, and Earth, once a powerful planet, was left vulnerable. The galaxy had turned its eyes toward Earth, seeing a weak and tired world ripe for conquest. But hidden deep beneath the surface of the planet, something was stirring. No one had remembered the tales, no one had believed the stories. The guardian of Earth, the one who had protected the planet centuries ago, had vanished without a trace. Over time, Earth had forgotten the protector. Legends faded into myths, and the protector's name was lost to history. But the protector had not truly gone. They had merely waited. The time was almost right for them to return. In the dark of space, a deep, strange signal echoed through the stars. It was a call, a signal from the past. The message was faint but unmistakable. It came from an ancient Earth defense system, built long ago to protect the planet from invaders. Only a few knew of its existence, and even fewer knew how to access it. The signal reached Earth's military systems, triggering alarms across the globe. It was a message no one had expected. Scientists, technicians, and military leaders scrambled to understand what it meant. The message was not clear, but there was one thing that stood out. A name lost in the annals of time. The Guardian of Earth. As the message repeated, the air grew heavy with an unsettling feeling. People across the planet felt it. The weight of something old and forgotten was awakening. But no one understood what was happening. They only knew that something powerful was coming. In the secret underground facility, where the Earth defense system was hidden, old machines hummed to life. For the first time in centuries, the system stirred. The power sources, long dormant, began to glow faintly. The walls, once silent, now whispered with activity. The deep chambers, long sealed, opened as the machinery came to life. The protector's awakening had begun. On the surface, Earth's leaders were scrambling. They knew that this was no ordinary message. The name of the Guardian was not just a title. It was a warning. But who had sent this message? Why had they waited so long? What was the threat? No one had answers. The protector, whoever they were, had vanished long ago, leaving only their legacy behind. But now, as the ancient systems stirred, Earth was forced to confront the possibility that the protector might return. But why? And what danger had they left behind? As the days passed, strange things began happening. First, it was small, a sudden shift in the weather, strange power surges, odd electromagnetic readings from deep space. Then, larger events followed. Space stations lost contact with Earth. Ships on the edge of the galaxy sent back messages, speaking of a dark force that was sweeping through the universe, destroying everything in its path. Alien species that once lived peacefully were now rallying for war, and their eyes were set on Earth. A group of scientists working on the signal finally made a breakthrough. They traced the source of the message to a remote location on Earth, a place where few had dared to explore. Deep beneath the surface, hidden away for centuries, was the Guardian's resting place. The protector had been waiting, and now they were waking. A small team of soldiers, led by Commander Eric Harper, was dispatched to the location. They were the best and brightest Earth had to offer, trained for the impossible. But none of them knew what they were about to face. As they descended into the depths of the Earth, the air grew colder. The silence was unnerving, and every step they took seemed to echo in the emptiness around them. The further they went, the more they felt it. A presence, something ancient and powerful, waiting just beyond their reach. It was like the ground itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Harper's team moved carefully, their weapons ready, but no one could shake the feeling that they were being watched. At last, they reached the heart of the underground facility. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols no one had seen before. They were old, older than any known language, and yet they seemed familiar, like echoes of a forgotten past. The deeper they went, the more the facility seemed to pulse with life, as if the very place was alive, breathing with anticipation. Then they found it, At the center of the facility was a massive chamber, its floor covered in glowing symbols. In the center of it stood a figure, encased in a crystalline structure. The figure was still, unmoving, but the energy in the room was undeniable. The Protector was here, waiting. Harper's heart raced as he stepped forward, his eyes locked on the figure. The protective shield around the figure flickered, and for the briefest moment, Harper could have sworn the figure's eyes opened. But it was gone in an instant. The Protector was waking, but there was no turning back now. The universe had begun to move, and Earth's lost Protector was about to return. But what awaited them in the stars was far worse than anyone could imagine. Darkness was closing in, and the fate of the galaxy would soon depend on the return of a legend. In the silence of the chamber, the Protector began to stir. And with that stirring, the universe began to tremble. The awakening was not instant, nor was it gentle. It was as if the very fabric of time itself had been torn, and the Protector's consciousness slowly began to unfurl. Deep beneath the Earth, in a hidden facility that no one remembered, the ancient systems hummed to life. Lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the massive chamber. Slowly, the figure inside the crystalline structure stirred. For centuries, the Protector had been dormant, encased in stasis, waiting. They had no choice. The world above had forgotten, and they were bound by a sacred promise to return only when the time was right. That time had come, but as the figure's eyes opened for the first time in centuries, they saw a world far different from the one they had left behind. The Protector's senses flared. The atmosphere felt wrong. Earth was different. Alien forces were closing in on the fragile world, and the peaceful civilizations across the galaxy were crumbling under a dark shadow. The Protector's heart, though not human, felt the weight of the situation. The Protector rose from the crystal chamber, their movements slow but purposeful. The ancient technology that had long protected them began to whisper in a forgotten tongue. They could hear the voice of the Earth itself, calling them, warning them. The Protector was not human, but neither were they an alien. They were something in between, created by a long-forgotten race to defend Earth. They had been the planet's shield, a force capable of standing against the universe's darkest powers. But now, after so long, that shield was needed once more. Outside the chamber, the facility was alive with movement. The soldiers, led by Commander Eric Harper, had been standing at the entrance, unsure of what to do next. They had no idea what to expect, and the feeling of unease was overwhelming. They had entered the facility thinking they would find a weapon or some kind of technology. What they found was a legend, one that was not meant to be found. But as the Protector moved through the underground halls, they felt something stir inside them. An ancient power, a force beyond their understanding. The technology that had been dormant for centuries was now active, and it was feeding them knowledge, filling in the gaps that had been lost over time. They were not just a weapon. They were a force of nature, a being created to fight against the darkness that was closing in. Commander Harper, unsure of what to do, signaled his team to move forward. The Protector's presence was overwhelming, but they could not deny the feeling of awe that came with seeing a legend come to life. But their awe was short-lived. The Protector's eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, turned toward them. "I am here," the Protector's voice echoed, not in words but in feelings, a deep vibration that resonated in their very bones. It was a voice not of sound, but of power, of something far older and more ancient than anything they had ever encountered. Harper stepped forward, trying to steady his shaking hands. Who are you?" The Protector's gaze shifted toward the ceiling, toward the world above. "I am the guardian of Earth, the protector of this world, but I am also its last hope." Harper swallowed. "We've been warned about the darkness. Are you the one who can stop it?" The Protector's gaze turned cold, their face unreadable. "The darkness is not just a force, it is a will. It seeks to destroy all that is light. I can stop it, but it will not be easy." The room grew heavy with the weight of their words. It was clear that the Protector was not here for some simple battle. The universe had begun to shift, and Earth was now at the center of a conflict far greater than anyone had realized. The darkness was not something that could be fought with mere weapons. It was an ancient evil, a force that had existed since the beginning of time itself. But there was something more, something that the Protector had not yet revealed. As they stood in the underground chamber, their minds stretched across the stars, feeling the pulse of the universe. The Protector knew that the forces of darkness were not only approaching Earth but were already here, hiding in plain sight. Alien races that had once been peaceful had begun to war with one another, and a greater threat loomed over them all. The Protector's awakening was no accident. It was a sign that the battle had already begun. And yet, the Protector also knew something that none of them could understand. Their powers, though great, were incomplete. They needed something that could restore them to their full strength. Without it, they would be at a disadvantage against the dark forces that were coming. "I am not the same as I was," the Protector said quietly. "I need something to restore my full power. Only then can I stand against the coming storm." Commander Harper, trying to process everything, nodded slowly. "What do you need?" The Protector's eyes seemed to brighten with knowledge, and they spoke in a voice filled with both hope and dread. "There are relics hidden across the stars, relics that can restore my strength. I must find them before the darkness does." Harper's mind raced. The relics, ancient artifacts scattered across the galaxy. He had heard stories of them, but no one had known where they were. The Protector had just revealed a new mission, one that could change the fate of the universe. They had to find these relics before the enemy did, or the galaxy would fall. "Then we'll help you," Harper said, his voice firm. The Protector nodded, but their gaze was distant. "We may not have enough time." The darkness was coming, and it was already closer than they realized. The Protector's mission had begun, and with it, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Earth's Protector had returned, but their fight was far from over. The stars were not as they once were. The galaxy had grown quiet, unnaturally so. Ships, once free to explore the vast reaches of space, now moved with caution, fearful of the dark shadow that had spread across the cosmos. Something ancient and malevolent was moving, and it had already begun to consume everything in its path. The Protector could feel it, even in the depths of Earth's hidden chambers, as they began to prepare for the mission ahead. The presence of the darkness pressed against their mind. It was a familiar sensation, one they had long hoped to forget. The darkness wasn't just an enemy. It was a force, an endless hunger that sought to swallow everything, leaving only void in its wake. The Protector knew this all too well. They had fought this battle before, centuries ago, when the universe had been much younger, and Earth was but a fledgling planet in the vast expanse of the galaxy. Back then, the darkness had been defeated, driven back to the edge of the stars. But it had not died. It had only waited, and now it had returned. The Protector stood alone in the heart of the underground facility, the hum of the ancient machines filling the silence. The team had left, giving them space to think. Earth's fate, the fate of all life in the galaxy, rested on their shoulders. But they knew that it was not just the Protector who would need to fight. There were others, hidden among the stars, whose forces had already begun to rally. The Protector's mind reached out, extending into the void of space. They felt the pulse of distant worlds, the subtle tremors of civilizations on the brink of collapse. On one planet, a once thriving empire of alien beings had been reduced to a shadow of its former self, its people fighting among themselves as they tried to survive. On another, an entire fleet of ships had gone silent, vanishing without a trace, leaving only the faintest whispers in the wind. But it wasn't just the planets that had been affected. The darkness was seeping into the very fabric of space itself. It was corrupting the stars, the very light that had once guided travelers and explorers. Star systems that had once been bright and full of life were now cold and dead, their lights snuffed out one by one. The Protector's senses were assaulted by the overwhelming weight of it all. The universe was dying, and the darkness was the cause. But the Protector had a plan that would require them to gather the ancient relics scattered across the galaxy. These relics were not simple artifacts. They were powerful pieces of technology, each imbued with a fraction of the ancient power that the Protector had once wielded. If they could find and restore these relics, they would regain the full extent of their abilities. But time was running out. The darkness was closing in, and every second they waited brought the universe closer to the edge of destruction. Commander Harper, the leader of the team that had uncovered the Protector, was already preparing for the next phase of the mission. He knew that this was not a simple task. It would require coordination, strength, and perhaps even sacrifice. Harper had no illusions about the dangers that lay ahead. The relics were scattered across the galaxy, hidden in places that no one had dared to explore for centuries. They were buried in ancient ruins, lost on forgotten worlds, guarded by hostile forces that had no love for Earth. But Harper was determined. He had seen firsthand the power that the Protector possessed, and he knew that without them, humanity stood no chance against the darkness. He gathered his team, and they set their course. The first relic was located on a distant planet, a world covered in deep, uncharted jungles. It was said that the relic was hidden in the ruins of an ancient civilization, one that had mysteriously vanished centuries ago. But finding it would be no easy task. The jungle was teeming with dangers, and the planet itself seemed alive with a hostile force. As Harper and his team prepared for the journey, the Protector watched from the shadows. They knew the mission was dangerous, perhaps even deadly, but they also knew it was necessary. The darkness was not waiting for anyone. They had to move quickly, or all would be lost. The team arrived on the jungle-covered world, the air thick with humidity and the sounds of unseen creatures. It was a harsh, unforgiving place, one where survival would be a daily struggle. But they had no choice. The relic was here, and they had to find it before the darkness did. The journey through the jungle was grueling. The team moved cautiously, their weapons drawn, scanning the dense foliage for any sign of danger. The air was thick with tension, and every rustle of leaves or distant cry of an animal made them jump. It wasn't long before they encountered their first obstacle, a pack of alien beasts, large and powerful, with razor-sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. The team fought hard, using every weapon and tactic they had learned, but it was clear that these creatures were only the beginning. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, they found the ruins of the ancient civilization. The stone structures were covered in vines, their surfaces worn down by centuries of neglect. But even in their ruined state, the remnants of the city were a testament to the power that had once been there. The relic they sought was hidden deep within the heart of the city, guarded by traps and puzzles that only someone with knowledge of the ancient culture could solve. Commander Harper's team moved carefully, solving the puzzles one by one, until they finally reached the central chamber. There, on a pedestal, lay the first relic. It was a strange, glowing orb, humming with energy. Harper approached it cautiously, but as soon as his hand touched the orb, the ground beneath them trembled. The jungle began to shake, and the sky above darkened. The Protector had felt it. The darkness was coming. They had no time to waste. The relic had been found, but the battle was far from over. The darkness was closing in on them, and the Protector knew that this was only the beginning of the fight. The moment the orb activated, the world around them seemed to warp. The jungle, once dense and alive with sound, now fell silent. The air grew thick with energy, an unseen force gathering and swirling around the team as though it had become a living thing. Commander Harper could feel it, the oppressive weight of something ancient and powerful stirring deep within the jungle. It wasn't just the relic's power that was causing this. It was something far older, something that the jungle itself had been hiding for centuries. The Protector, watching from the shadows, felt the surge of energy as well. The orb was just the beginning. They had hoped for more, but what they didn't expect was the sudden burst of power that flooded their being. The Protector's senses sharpened, their body thrumming with the energy they had long been denied. But even as the energy coursed through them, they felt a warning. This power, though ancient, was not the full strength they had once wielded. The relic was only a fragment, a piece of a greater whole, and its power was incomplete. The team, standing near the pedestal with the glowing orb, felt the ground beneath them shake. Harper turned, his heart racing, but he saw nothing. It was as though the very air had turned against them. He knew they didn't have much time. They had to get out of there, fast. But the orb had already activated, and they couldn't simply leave without understanding what had been unleashed. "We need to move," Harper shouted to his team, but his voice barely reached their ears over the loud rumble that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The jungle had turned against them, and they were no longer alone. The shadows in the trees began to move, twisting into forms that were not entirely human nor entirely alien. The Protector's eyes narrowed as they sensed the new presence. These were no ordinary creatures. They were remnants of the ancient civilization that had once lived on this world. And they had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the Protector to return. The energy from the orb had awakened them, and they were not happy. The creatures emerged from the shadows, their forms shifting and changing with the flickering light of the orb. Some appeared as tall, humanoid figures cloaked in mist, while others seemed to flow like liquid, their shapes constantly shifting. They moved toward the team with unsettling speed, their glowing eyes filled with malice. Harper's team fired at the first wave of attackers, but their weapons seemed to do little more than slow them down. The creatures advanced, unfazed, their forms melting through the forest like smoke. The Protector could feel the shift in the air as the creatures surrounded the team. They were powerful, and there were many of them. This was no ordinary battle. These creatures were part of the old world, created by a civilization long forgotten. They were guardians, but not the kind that protected life. They were the keepers of the darkness, the ones who ensured that nothing would stand in the way of the evil that was beginning to resurface. With a quick, silent motion, the Protector stepped forward, their form glowing with the power of the orb. The air around them hummed with energy as they extended their hand toward the creatures, focusing the power they had just gained. The creatures recoiled as if burned, their forms flickering in and out of existence. For the first time, they hesitated. Harper, seeing the Protector in action, ordered his team to fall back. The Protector was the key. They were the only one who could turn the tide. But even as the team retreated, they knew this was only the beginning. The jungle had become a battleground, and they had to find the other relics before the darkness fully awoke. The Protector stood firm, pushing back the creatures with each wave of energy. But the more they used the orb's power, the more they could feel the strain. The power was growing, but it was incomplete. They needed the other relics. Without them, they would never be able to fully harness the energy they had once controlled. The creatures, though weakened, were relentless. The Protector knew they could not hold this position for much longer. Harper and his team reached the edge of the jungle, breathing heavily, and watched in awe as the Protector fought. But it was clear that the battle was far from over. The Protector, though powerful, was struggling. Their energy was draining, and the creatures seemed to be endless. The only hope now was to continue their search for the next relic, if they could survive long enough. As the last of the creatures were pushed back into the depths of the jungle, the Protector fell to their knees, exhausted. The orb's power had given them a brief surge, but it was not enough. They had held the line for now, but the darkness was closing in. Harper stepped forward, offering the Protector a hand. "We need to move. We can't stay here." The Protector looked up, their eyes glowing faintly. "You are right. The darkness is stronger than I anticipated. But the next relic, it's our only chance." The team moved quickly, retracing their steps back through the jungle, hearts heavy with the knowledge that the worst was yet to come. The Protector had held them off, but the battle for Earth was far from over. The relics would take them across the galaxy, to distant worlds and forgotten places. But each one they found would bring them closer to the final showdown, the final confrontation with the darkness that sought to consume everything. As they left the jungle behind and made their way toward their next destination, the Protector could feel the presence of the darkness growing stronger. They could sense its approach, and they knew the universe was on the brink of chaos. But the Protector also felt something else: hope. It was faint, but it was there. They were not alone. And with each step they took, they moved one step closer to reclaiming the power that had been stolen from them. The galaxy was falling, but the Protector had returned to fight. And they would not stop until the darkness was defeated. The journey to find the next relic took them farther from Earth than they had ever gone before. With every passing moment, the weight of the mission pressed heavier on their shoulders. The Protector had barely recovered from the strain of their last battle, but there was no time to rest. The darkness, though momentarily held at bay, was closing in on them. Their next destination was a world lost to history, a place where no one had ventured for millennia. Commander Harper and his team had grown accustomed to the Protector's unrelenting drive, but they too felt the rising tension. This mission was unlike anything they had ever been a part of. There was a deep fear in the air, not just of the creatures they fought, but of what they were chasing, the very remnants of an ancient conflict that stretched across the stars. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of every sentient being in the galaxy. The planet they were heading toward, a desolate world once known as Viridia, had been abandoned long ago after a catastrophic war. The remnants of the old civilization were scattered across the surface, their cities reduced to rubble, their people long gone. The planet's surface was covered in endless deserts, with jagged mountains rising like the bones of a giant beast, and winds that carried with them the dust of forgotten ages. As their ship descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, a sense of unease settled over them. Viridia was a graveyard of a civilization that had once thrived, a stark reminder of the power that the darkness held. It was said that the relic they sought was buried deep beneath the planet's surface, hidden in the ruins of a once great city that had now been reduced to little more than a shattered memory. The Protector's eyes burned with the intensity of their focus as they studied the ancient maps, the last remnants of knowledge about this forgotten world. "We've arrived," Harper said, his voice grim. "Stay alert. This planet is dead, but that doesn't mean it's empty." The team disembarked from their ship, stepping into the harsh desert landscape of Viridia. The sun was a pale disk in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the barren ground. The air was dry and thin, making every breath feel like it had to be earned. The silence here was suffocating, as if the planet itself were holding its breath, waiting for something. The Protector led the way, their presence a stark contrast to the desolation around them. The sand crunched beneath their feet as they moved forward, their every step leaving a mark on the planet's dusty surface. As they traveled deeper into the heart of the ancient city, the ruins rose around them, broken towers and crumbling walls that once had been symbols of strength and prosperity. Now, they were only monuments to loss. It wasn't long before the team stumbled upon something unexpected, an underground passage, hidden beneath the wreckage of what had once been the central palace of the city. The Protector's senses flared as they approached the entrance. There was something here, something powerful that had been waiting, just out of reach. They could feel the relic's presence, buried deep below, calling to them. The air grew colder as they descended into the darkness, their lights casting long, eerie shadows against the stone walls. The passage was narrow, the air thick with the scent of ancient dust. But there was no turning back. The relic was close. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as though the walls themselves were closing in on them, the silence thickening, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached a large chamber, its ceiling high and vaulted, the walls covered in strange, alien symbols. In the center of the room, atop a raised platform, sat the relic, an orb, similar to the one they had found on the jungle-covered world, but this one was different. It pulsed with a deep greenish light, and the air around it seemed to vibrate with power. The protector stepped forward, their heart racing as they reached out to touch the relic. But as their hand made contact, the ground trembled violently beneath them, and the chamber seemed to come alive with energy. The walls cracked, dust and debris falling from above as a low, rumbling sound filled the air. It was a sound that sent a chill down their spine, a sound they knew all too well. The darkness was awakening. The protector's eyes flickered with the realization. The relic had been a trap. This place, this entire world, had been set up as a monument to the darkness, a place where it could regather its strength and launch its final assault. And now that the protector had touched the relic, the dormant evil had been roused. The chamber around them began to shift, the walls closing in, the very ground beneath their feet becoming unstable. "We need to get out of here now," Harper shouted, his voice filled with urgency. The team turned, but the passage they had come through was now blocked, rubble falling from above, sealing their only way out. Panic spread through the group, but the protector remained calm. They could feel the darkness rising, but they knew they could not escape without the relic. It was their only hope, the key to restoring their power and stopping the force that was consuming the galaxy. The protector held their ground, their mind reaching out to the relic. They could feel its power surging, its connection to the darkness deepening. It was not just a piece of technology. It was a link, a bridge between the protector's ancient power and the malevolent force that had been growing in the shadows. The protector could sense the relic's potential. If they could harness it, they could fight back, but first, they needed to gain control over it. Harper and his team began to move toward the walls, trying to clear a path, but they knew that they would not have long before the entire structure collapsed around them. The protector focused all their energy on the relic, their body glowing with the raw power of the ancient forces that had once been theirs. It was exhausting, but they had no choice. They could feel the darkness closing in on them from every direction, and they had to act fast. Finally, with a surge of energy, the protector managed to unlock the relic's full power. The chamber erupted with light, the relic's energy cascading outward, creating a barrier of force around them. The darkness recoiled, its influence weakened for the moment, but the protector knew it was not enough. This battle was far from over. "Let's go," Harper yelled, as the team rushed forward, following the protector as they made their way out of the collapsing chamber. The relic was in their possession now, but they knew it was only one piece of the puzzle. There were more relics out there, scattered across the galaxy, and each one would be a battle in itself. But the protector was not about to give up. The darkness had awoken, but so had they. They had the power now, and with each step, they would grow stronger. The protector's mission was clear: to stop the darkness and save the galaxy, no matter the cost. The journey from Viridio was marked by silence, a silence that pressed against the crew like the weight of the stars themselves. The protector, their body now infused with the energy of the second relic, remained focused. Every part of them hummed with power, but they knew that the darkness was still out there, looming, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And they weren't the only ones who could sense its presence. As the team made their way back to the ship, the stars above seemed distant, unreachable, as though they, too, were afraid to come closer. Earth's protector had once been a figure of legend, a being who could bend the fabric of space and time. But that power had been lost, scattered across the galaxy. And as much as the protector's energy had been restored, they knew it was incomplete. Each relic they found only gave them a fraction of the strength they once held. They needed them all, and they needed them fast. Once aboard the ship, Commander Harper gathered his team. "We found 2 relics, but the darkness isn't waiting for us to gather the rest. It's already spreading. We have to move faster. We can't let it consume another world." The team nodded in agreement. Everyone had seen what the darkness could do: planets destroyed, entire fleets wiped out, and civilizations reduced to dust. It was unlike anything they had ever faced, and with each passing moment, it seemed to grow stronger, feeding off the chaos and destruction it left behind. "We've got coordinates for the next relic," said one of the team members, pointing to a holographic display of distant stars. "It's located on a planet called Gorgona, a frozen world on the edge of the galaxy. It's not much to look at, but the ancient texts point to it as the final resting place of one of the most powerful relics, one that could tip the scales in our favor." Harper turned to the Protector. "You'll lead the way. We're counting on you." The Protector nodded, their eyes glowing faintly as they stared at the map of the galaxy. The cold chill of space seemed to tug at their mind, reminding them of the vastness of the universe and of how much they had to reclaim. With a sharp nod, they turned toward the cockpit, and the ship's engines hummed to life. The stars outside the viewport blurred as they jumped to light speed, their destination clear. But no one could shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. As they approached Gorgona, the planet appeared as little more than a pale blue dot on the horizon, its surface covered in endless sheets of ice and snow. There was no sign of life, no sign of any civilization. Just a cold, desolate world waiting in the void. The air outside was bitterly cold, and the surface was perpetually shrouded in a cloud of frozen fog. If it wasn't for the coordinates leading them to an underground temple hidden deep beneath the ice, the team would have assumed it was completely lifeless. "We're coming in," Harper said, his voice tight as the ship descended toward the icy surface. "Everyone, suit up. We've got no idea what we're walking into." The temperature outside plummeted as the ship's landing gear touched the frozen ground. The team disembarked, their breath visible in the icy air. The silence here was even more oppressive than on Viridia, as though the world itself had been swallowed by the cold. The only sounds were the crunch of boots in the snow and the low hum of the ship behind them. The Protector led the way, their eyes scanning the desolate landscape. They could feel the relic's energy calling to them, deep beneath the ice. It was a pull they couldn't resist. The deeper they went, the stronger the sensation became, until they were sure they were close. They found the entrance to the temple hidden beneath a layer of thick ice, an ancient doorway carved into the side of a mountain. The symbols on the door were familiar, marking it as a place of great importance to the civilization that had once inhabited the planet. The Protector's hand hovered over the entrance, and for a moment, there was a sense of recognition. This was no mere ruin. It was a place of power. As the door slid open with a low, grinding sound, the team stepped into the temple. Inside, the walls were adorned with carvings that told the story of the ancient people of Gorgona, great warriors who had once stood against the darkness, only to fall into ruin. It was clear that this place had been a last stand, a final refuge against the encroaching evil. The air inside was thick with ancient energy, the kind that stirred memories of battles long past. "Keep your guard up," Harper warned as they moved deeper into the temple. The walls narrowed as they descended into the heart of the structure, the temperature dropping even further. The air seemed to grow heavier with every step, as though the weight of history was pressing down on them. They finally reached the central chamber, and there, standing in the middle of the room, was the relic. Unlike the first two, this one was not an orb. It was a crystalline structure, a jagged shard of a once great weapon, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. The Protector moved forward, drawn to it like a magnet, their fingers trembling as they reached out to touch the shard. As soon as their fingers made contact, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The chamber seemed to warp around them, and a loud booming voice echoed through the temple, filling the air with dread. "You dare disturb me," the voice rumbled, as if the very walls of the temple were speaking. "You dare to awaken what has been buried for millennia." The Protector stepped back, their mind racing. The darkness had followed them here, and it was awake now, its power roiling beneath the surface. The energy from the relic surged through the Protector, merging with their own, filling them with strength, but also with the feeling of something far darker. something ancient and hungry. Harper grabbed the Protector's arm. "We need to go. Now." But the Protector stood frozen, the power of the relic coursing through them. They could feel the darkness, feel its hunger. It was just as alive as they were. And they knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a weapon. It was a prison meant to contain the very force they were fighting against. But now it had been released. The temple began to crumble around them, and the ground shook with a force that threatened to swallow them whole. The Protector, now more powerful than ever, had to make a choice: use the full power of the relic and risk losing themselves to the darkness, or abandon it and leave the galaxy to its fate. In that moment, they made the only decision they could. The relic was their key, and they would not let it fall into the hands of the darkness. The Protector stepped forward, their voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We fight together." With that, the battle for the galaxy was about to begin in earnest. The sky above Gorgona seemed to crack as the ground beneath their feet trembled with the awakening of something ancient and malevolent. The relic, now fully charged with the Protector's energy, pulsed with an intensity that threatened to shatter the very fabric of the planet. The darkness, released from its ancient prison, seemed to reach out in all directions, its tendrils stretching across the galaxy, seeking to engulf everything in its path. It was no longer just a threat. It was the beginning of an all-consuming force that could obliterate entire civilizations. The Protector, standing at the center of the collapsing temple, felt the weight of the relic's power surging through them. It was more than they had ever experienced, a force so pure and raw that it threatened to overwhelm their senses. But they had no choice. This was their moment to wield the power of the ancient Protectors, the last line of defense against the darkness. Harper's voice cut through the chaos. "We need to get out of here. The whole place is coming down." But the Protector didn't move. They stood frozen, their mind locked onto the task at hand. The darkness was closing in, and the relic, the key to stopping it, was within their grasp. But as the Protector reached out to fully embrace the power of the shard, they felt something else, a connection. The darkness wasn't just an external force, it was intertwined with them. They had been chosen to wield this power, but it came at a cost. Every step they took toward controlling it brought them closer to the edge of destruction. Harper's team continued to fight their way through the temple, trying to keep the collapse at bay. But they could feel it, something shifting in the air. The Protector was no longer themselves. They had become something greater, something more dangerous. And with every second that passed, they felt the darkness clawing at their mind, whispering promises of ultimate power, of victory over the forces of light. The relic in the Protector's hand vibrated violently, its light flaring as it synchronized with their energy. The entire temple seemed to respond, the walls twisting and cracking as though the building itself was alive, reacting to the awakening power. The Protector's body trembled under the strain of containing such overwhelming force. But they didn't stop. They knew that if they faltered for even a moment, the darkness would overtake them. And with it, the galaxy would fall. "We can't wait any longer," Harper shouted, running up to the Protector, his voice urgent. "We need to leave now." But the Protector's eyes were glowing with an intensity that made Harper hesitate. "I'm not leaving," the Protector said, their voice low and filled with a strange, almost unnatural calm. "The darkness will not just consume this world. It will consume everything. Earth, the galaxy, all of it. I cannot allow that." Harper gripped the Protector's arm, trying to shake them free from the trance they seemed to be in. "You don't have to do this alone. We can fight together. There's still time." But the Protector only shook their head. "This isn't just a fight for survival, Harper. It's a fight for everything. The darkness is not just a force of destruction. It is the shadow of creation itself. The universe has been balanced on the edge for millennia, and now it has come time to tip that balance." The air grew thick with energy as the Protector lifted the relic higher, their voice now echoing through the collapsing chamber. "I will be the shield. I will hold the line. But I cannot do it without this, without all of this power. Harper stepped back, watching in awe and fear as the Protector's body seemed to absorb the energy from the relic, their form glowing with an otherworldly light. The temple's walls groaned as if in protest, cracks widening as the very foundation of the structure began to break apart. "You won't survive this," Harper said, his voice a mixture of desperation and understanding. "If you embrace this power, it will consume you." The Protector's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, their human side seemed to resurface. "Perhaps," they said quietly, "but if I don't, everything we know will be lost." And with that, the Protector fully embraced the power of the relic. Their body erupted with energy, a blinding flash that pushed Harper and the team back. The darkness around them recoiled as if threatened by the raw force unleashed from the Protector's body. In that instant, the entire temple began to collapse. The floor shattered, sending massive chunks of rock tumbling downward. The team scrambled for cover, the ground beneath them breaking apart like glass. The relic's energy flared to life, and the Protector's form became a beacon of light, standing firm amidst the chaos. The darkness, once a shadow at the edges of the Protector's mind, was now a tangible force, a living entity that sought to consume the Protector and everything they stood for. The Protector fought to maintain control, drawing the power of the relic into themselves as a shield against the dark energy that rushed toward them. It was a battle of wills, the Protector fighting not just for the survival of their team, but for the very soul of the universe. As the temple collapsed around them, Harper and his team ran for their lives, navigating the crumbling passageways, trying to reach the exit before the entire structure was reduced to rubble. They didn't look back, knowing that there was nothing they could do now. The Protector had made their choice, and all they could do was pray that it would be enough. The ship's engines roared to life as they launched into the sky, the ground beneath them shaking as Gorgona's surface began to fracture. In the distance, the temple exploded in a burst of light, sending shockwaves across the planet's surface. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire world might break apart, but then, just as quickly as it had begun, everything fell silent. The Protector had done it. They had held back the darkness for now. But the battle was far from over. There were still relics to find, and with each passing moment, the darkness was growing stronger. The Protector knew their fight was only beginning. As the team looked back at the dying world of Gorgona, they realized that the Protector was no longer just a warrior. They were the last hope of the galaxy. And in that moment, they understood the true cost of their mission. The Protector had given everything to stop the darkness, but what remained of them was uncertain. Harper's voice broke through the silence. "We've won this battle, but the war is far from over. The Protector will need us, and we will need them." The stars ahead seemed to burn brighter than ever before, as though the galaxy itself was waiting for the next move. The Protector had returned, but the darkness was not finished. The fight for the galaxy, for all of existence, had just begun.